One of the questions asked by our local residents is whether they are exposed to radiation as a result of living near our nuclear generating facilities. Perhaps the reason radiation has become the subject of so much myth and mystery is that we can't see it, but it's everywhere around us. In fact, virtually everything is naturally radioactive. The soil, the rocks, the rivers and oceans, and even our own bodies. For over 100 years, scientists have been studying radiation, and what we've learned has uncovered the mystery and should help put the myths to rest. We know that radiation is a natural part of our world. Natural or background radiation comes from the sun's cosmic rays. It's found in the potassium in our food, and it's in our water. It's even in the air we breathe. The average person is exposed to approximately 2,000 microsieverts every year. No need to worry, though, that's a very tiny amount. About 85% of that comes from natural background radiation that is simply present here on planet Earth. The other 15% comes from man-made sources, some of which may surprise you. They're everyday things, such as television sets, household smoke detectors, and medical X-rays. And yes, nuclear power plants. Under normal operating conditions, the air and water released by a nuclear station contains minute amounts of radioactivity. So, how safe is it? The nuclear regulator, the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, establishes strict standards for station emissions. But Ontario Power Generation consistently does much better. The best way to understand this is to imagine that if a person stood at the nuclear station's boundary 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for an entire year, and consumed the local water and food, that person would receive less than 1/10 of the exposure they would receive from the sun's cosmic rays during a round-trip flight from Toronto to Vancouver, which is between 50 and 80 microsieverts. It is also just a very small fraction of the annual legal limit of 1,000 microsieverts set by the nuclear regulator, the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. Two of the most critical safety features of OPG's nuclear stations are designed to contain radiation: a containment vessel, also known as a reactor building, and a vacuum building. In the very remote event of a malfunctioning reactor, whereby there would be an excess of steam, none would be released into the atmosphere. The steam would be sucked out of the containment vessel into the vacuum building, where water would douse the steam, condensing it into water and creating room for more steam. Due to the safe operation of our nuclear generating facilities, our vacuum buildings have never been required, although they are tested regularly to ensure they are operational. OPG is indeed proud of its safety record. In over 35 years of operation, there has never been a release of radiation in Ontario that has resulted in harm to the public. In fact, a 2007 report on the health effects of radiation by the Durham Region Health Department found no effect on health from the Pickering and Darlington nuclear generating stations.
From what we have looked at, there would be no effects coming from the nuclear plant, and that is because the doses are extremely low. We looked at the literature that shows information about radiation and health, and this comes from very historical studies or much more higher doses of radiation. We looked at data specific to Durham Region, particularly Ajax Pickering and Clarington, which are the areas around the two nuclear plants. We looked at cancer rates, birth defect rates, stillbirth rates. And the other thing that we looked at was the actual doses coming from the plants. That information comes from a very extensive monitoring program that OPG does, and we know that the doses are very low. So putting all those three pieces of information together gives us a good picture of what's happening in Durham Region, and that is that it's very unlikely that there are any health effects coming from the nuclear stations.